It's taking a second to get started. Okay, here we go.
This week on Let's Talk Texas, we'll talk about the Amarillo Task Force reopening Texas in America, President Trump's approval ratings on the rise, Biden and Clinton join forces, and former President George W. Bush's message to America.
This is the issue of this election.
Texas isn't great just by chance.
When you overtax, overregulate, and overlitigate, guess what? They're going to look for places to go. The classic question in politics: are you better off now than you were 2 years ago? It's Texas.
We will never give up Texas.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.
All right, welcome to Let's Talk Texas. I'm your host, Jordan Overturf, joined by my co-host, RPT Chairman James Dickey. Chairman, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. You know, we had a fantastic weekend. We had our first in-person SREC meeting. The State Republican Executive Committee got together in person in Weatherford. We had a wonderful Representative Phil King was there and his team. They welcomed us there. We had a fantastic space. We had a room for 450. We had about 60 people there. It was great turnout. We did some proper social distancing while we also got the business of the party done. It was fantastic.
Excellent. Well, there's quite a few shout outs to go out this week. Who are you giving props to this week, Chairman?
The biggest one's got to be everybody who participated in RPT Serves Volunteer Week to help their community. And we had candidates and elected officials all over Texas doing their part. Together, we are going to overcome this difficult time. And every act of service helps your community do that. Continue to do that. All candidates, nominees, volunteers, if you are helping out in your community, just tag it with RPT Serves and we will spread the word about that. It's fantastic. And then also to Attorney General Ken Paxton for enforcing the laws appropriately in spite of the Democrats' attempt to change them during this coronavirus pandemic, and to everybody on the State Republican Executive Committee who came together to hold that great meeting on Saturday and make all of our rule changes that we've had so far completely official so that we're protecting our 38 Electoral College votes for President Trump come January.
That's always good to hear that. We're making sure to protect those crucial rules. So that way, you know, as we look at how things go in disarray during this coronavirus thing, it's just comforting to know RPT has got everything under control. So let's go ahead and move into our topics. We got a lot to get to today. First up is the Amarillo Task Force. Amarillo's Mayor Ginger Nelson announced that a COVID-19 task force will be sent to stop the spread of coronavirus. I actually have a friend from the Amarillo area who showed me evidence that the task force is already on the ground there trying to do work for Amarillo residents. Can you tell us more about this, Chairman?
They absolutely are. And I've had the pleasure of meeting Mayor Nelson a couple of times and working with her. She is super sharp. And I know that we've got the right team on this. And both Governor Greg Abbott and Vice President Mike Pence, they're completely aware of the increasing number of cases in the Texas Panhandle. And they're working together with that, having sent that team to prevent the spread. They're going to bump up testing. They're sharing resources, supplies, and strategies and testing equipment. And it is a challenge. Hospitals in that area have been running low on beds and ventilators and personal protective equipment. But and in this process, we're going to see some positive testing result increase as well. But that's going to help us learn a lot more. So we're not afraid of that. What we do encourage folks in the Amarillo area to do is stay away from groups of unrelated people. Don't do your parts. Continue to social distance, uh, and take a couple of extra precautions because it is they're very much in that community. Wear a mask. Protect those around you who are most at risk.
Yeah, and from the reporting I've seen that a lot of this has to do with the meatpacking plants that are up there and just what close proximity those folks have to be in order to perform that duty. Do you think this is the best strategy considering all these factors?
I do. Our Republican representatives and have really shown leadership up and down the from every perspective, and the mayor there, she is really sharp, and she'll continue to help that as well. They've been bringing in strategies that have worked in other meatpacking plants and other processing operations around the country, and the whole team of Republican leadership is unified in an effort to slow that spread and protect Texans. They're
Yeah.
clearly putting that first.
Yeah, and it's important to note that this isn't just the city of Amarillo. It's Potter County and Moore County that are nearby,
Yes.
and there are folks from Oklahoma traveling across the border to work in these meatpacking plants. So it's kind of a regional effort up there to make sure that that's under control. Looking at the state on the whole, though, Chairman, Texas officially started to reopen on Friday. How are Texans responding?
Absolutely. Our economy has taken a tremendous blow in all this, but Texans are resilient and ready to get back to work. I could see it in the SREC meeting on Saturday. I could see it as I've slowly started going back out, and as I've done my takeout orders from restaurants and others around. The governor is continuing to take precautions, continue to encourage people to protect the health and safety of all Texans. But Texans are already supporting businesses within their communities. I was out at a couple of restaurants over the weekend, and even though they're currently in most places only operating at 25% occupancy, restaurants are figuring out how to do this. It's going to be a slow and steady recovery, but Texans can and will do it, and will do it safely. So to the extent you're interacting with a lot of people you don't know, wear a mask, not just to protect you, but to protect others, especially those at the greatest risk. And in fact, we have a pack of masks that you can order from RPT today and ensure you're not only safe, but stylish as Texas reopens.
Excellent. Yeah, the first step to keeping Texas red is put your RPT face mask on, right? And get out there.
That's right.
How do you think Texans or Texas on the whole begins to recover from coronavirus?
Well, the Texas is and always has been an economic engine, and that is not going to change. And the Republican policies that have led Texas to boom before is going to lead Texas and the nation to boom again, which is why we at the party have been making sure that we continue to do the work we have to elect more Republicans in November. Uh, Governor Abbott and Republican representatives all over the state, including county judges and down, are continuing to outline the best strategies to reopen safely. And we're starting to see some of that now from May 1 to May 18th. Fully expect to hear the governor give extra guidance and extra steps as we move forward. The task force is working on suggestions for way to open more, and businesses, individuals are starting to figure this out, which is not surprising to those of us who believe in personal responsibility and have faith in Texas voters. We're figuring this out together. We will.
Yeah, and it was hard to miss some of the reporting this weekend from the response. I mean, Texans came out in droves. The seawall in Galveston was packed as tons of people piled in there to, take in the sunshine, be outside, maybe have some fun. A couple of the boat ramps here in the Travis County area were opened up this weekend. So, folks are finally getting a little bit of a taste of what Texas summer looks like. I know in the tiny town I live in, there's this little beer joint that's not far from me. Now they sell sandwiches and things like that, mostly. I don't want to get them in trouble, but I mean, people are out. They're ready to return to their lives, and it's great to see that people aren't responding with fear. They're out there. If they want to wear a mask, they're wearing a mask, and now hopefully they'll be wearing an RPT one, right, Chairman?
That's right. And that's really what's different about this is in taking personal responsibility, we're going to be more sensitive about spreading germs than we normally would be, and more sensitive about thinking about others than we would normally have to. That's the important thing. And as Texas Republicans, we believe in doing that so we can do this. And so Saturday, as we had the State Republican Executive Committee meeting get together, it was great to see everybody out again. It was obvious people liked to get out again. It was also obvious that people could figure out how to do this. And these are important steps. We're moving forward with our convention process. We've got conventions coming up starting in mid-May and late May and mid-June. And we're working towards having our state convention in July in Houston. And in fact, we're working with Convention Center about that. And so that's all part of reopening, and reopening not just the state, but towards the country. The president and the RNC have said 100% we are going to have our national convention in August in Charlotte. Well, if we're going to get there, we've got to take steps in between, and we are doing that. And President Trump and the task force, they're really leading an unprecedented, comprehensive, and aggressive whole of America data-driven approach to slow the spread of the virus and then continue moving forward positively.
Yeah, and speaking of the president, did you catch any of his town hall last night out at the Lincoln Memorial there on Fox News?
Yeah, that was really great. What an amazing visual of two Republican presidents who each had to deal with major challenges during their presidency. And President Trump continuing to just communicate with the people and take his message straight to the population that, we are in this together, and we are working to open America again and do so wisely. And as we continue to slow this spread, then President Trump, the White House, the task force continue to expand testing. We've already had 5.8 million tests. By next month, we could be at a place where we're performing 2 million tests a week. We're also improving the spread of personal protective equipment, and it's getting delivered to states all over the country as needed. We've had all sorts of flights, airlifting personal protective equipment where it's needed. Ventilators have been distributed. The Texans and the entire United States, we are up for this. And President Trump has really taken steps to protect our nation's seniors and those most vulnerable as we face this.
Yeah, and President Trump has been great in his leadership, not just from the health perspective and Dr. Fauci and the entire task force, but also has been really focused on getting economic relief to small businesses and setting up this plan for the country to reopen, has he not?
Oh, absolutely. He showed real leadership, real sensitivity and empathy for Americans impacted by this economically, and an awareness of how important business and the private sector are going to be for the recovery. 120 million Americans received economic impact payments. And in the first round of funding, the Paycheck Protection Program had more than 1.6 million loans, over 340 billion. In the second round, another nearly 500,000 loans for another 52 billion. 14 years worth of loans were processed in 14 days. There is really a focused, concentrated effort on making sure that as we stay safe and protect against the impact that could have been so devastating from coronas health-wise, we also take steps to make sure it's not more devastating than it could be on the economic side as well. And that the president has absolutely been leading on that front.
Well, and because of that, now the president has seen his leadership draw new numbers in a recent Gallup poll. The president's approval is on the rise. Are you surprised at all to see his approval ticking upwards?
I'm not surprised. He built the strongest economy in the world and he's focused on rebuilding it now. And so that Gallup poll released Thursday showed his approval rating at a staggering 93% in the Republican Party. But also, he has been winning over independents. And so his approval rating overall is at the highest level. And that's not surprising, showing the great leadership he has shown, and the American people really have taken notice. That big bump in support among independents, where now 47% of independents say they support him, up from 39% a year ago, April. That is a significant improvement, especially considering how easily handling all of this could have gone wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we look down the road, what indicators does this give you as we move closer to November?
Well, this clearly shows the American people are behind our president and will support him in November. And the difference between the president's leadership and the Democrats' attempt to really politicize the pandemic are stark and obvious to independent voters. And Texans, especially, will no doubt take notice and support the president for putting them ahead and their needs ahead of a dangerous political agenda, as they've seen just naked political ambition on the Democrat side get advanced.
Yeah, we certainly have seen Democrats fall all over themselves to try and make a political argument out of this response. And meanwhile, on the top ticket side of things, President or Vice President Joe Biden and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton got together for a virtual town hall. And surprise, surprise, Joe Biden has finally secured Hillary Clinton's endorsement for the race. So, based on, did you catch any of that town hall with the former Secretary of State and Vice President?
I couldn't take much of that at all. But the thing to me that is stark and is an obvious sign of trouble in all this is it took until he had sealed the nomination and was the presumptive nominee of the Democrat Party before he could get the endorsement of the president, for whom he was vice president for 8 years, and the Secretary of State, who worked for them for several years. And for that to be obvious how long that took and how slow that came is not a good sign. They tried to gaff the president and tried to say that the country needed a real president and not someone who plays one on TV. But you know what? The president's been the real president for 3 years and was elected that way in 2016. And in fact, of all people, Clinton should remember that.
Yeah. Meanwhile, there seemed to be, of what I watched of it, little to be relevant information that voters could use. I mean, that their entire conversation was just a rehash of all the problems that Hillary had with him in 2016. And meanwhile, you've got these two former Obama, cabinet members sitting here, and they're running on the same ticket. I mean, Biden is running on the same ticket that Hillary did last time, which was look at all the great things I did under, the previous administration. And it's not gonna work. Does this seem like an odd timing for Hillary to come out again, just as Joe Biden is trying to deflect and deny these allegations surrounding him and Tara Reade?
There was so much into this. He clearly needed to do whatever he could do to build up support, and he doesn't have an exciting base of support. So he had to go back to the well. For Clinton to suggest that Biden's building the kind of coalition she had in 2016, if I were him, I would not take that as a good sign. But that's the reality we have here. While Biden is adopting the most extreme leftist, crazy green new disaster positions of the most extreme wing of his party, He doesn't represent the future, he represents the past. And that's exactly what we saw there on display is the past. And it was Hillary Clinton, who's got decades of being around things and all sorts of scandals. We've got Biden with decades of being in office. I mean, how crazy is it that someone who has served in office for 40 years, including 8 years as vice president of the United States, doesn't have a handful of accomplishments that he can point to and make the case for why he ought to be president, and instead has to rehash old battles that were lost the first time through. Clinton is bad for America. We rejected her once, and her endorsement for him is no better at all.
Yeah, and this is a time when Americans want leadership, real leadership, on display, out for everyone to see, right? And
Yep.
instead, we have Joe Biden sequestered for whatever reasons those may be, right? But he's certainly not getting out there and providing the level of leadership that Americans want to see. Meanwhile, speaking of voices from the past, President George W. Bush made headlines over the weekend, offering a unifying message for Americans during this time. It was brief, but full of that same candor that helped the former Texas governor win the presidency. What'd you think of W's message?
Oh, it was right on target. It was exactly the kind of message that we all can use right now. It was a message that we come together to overcome this challenge as a nation. The president's been saying that for former President Bush to say that was just encouraging, and he really brought focus to the troubles of emotional separation and isolation, and we're all dealing with that. You could tell. I mean, at the SREC meeting we had in person on Saturday, it was obvious that getting back together in person is energizing. And so right now, while people are more isolated than usual, it's difficult, even though it is what we must do to overcome the pandemic. And the former President Bush expressing that empathy and that simple kindness, it's so powerful. And it's a good reminder to all of us of how powerful it is. And when he talked about us coming together following September 11th, 2001, he's so right that that's exactly what we need to do again now. And he guided our nation through difficult times. President Trump is doing the same now. We rise and fall together, and we are determined to rise, President Bush said. And he is absolutely right. And his message obviously came from the heart. That is the kind of thing we need. If we're going to overcome this, we can't do it divided. We have to be united. That's why President Trump continues to say we are in this together. We're not looking on the Republican side. We're not looking to just score political points. We are not looking to take advantage of a crisis. We are looking to put the health and safety of everybody at the top of our list, and also be concerned about their well-being as we get America started again. And I'm so grateful that our Republican representatives have done so consistently. And this was a great reminder of what a great tradition we have of Republican presidents caring for all Americans.
Yeah, I couldn't believe how much power was packed into that message, right? And obviously the imagery that went along with it was stirring. You know, they put a score behind it that helped really lift his message, right? But there were two things that President Bush brought up in that message that I thought were just, they struck a chord with me. The first one was talking about how, the natural inclination of us to embrace when we see each other now could have the opposite effect, right?
Right.
We want to bring so much joy and care for one another when we see each other. And that's tough because different people react differently. I know there are definitely some huggers out there who the struggle is real for them right now.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was a very interesting point to bring up that and to make sure that we are mindful of that as we get back together for these things. But the other thing that I thought was very poignant was calling the disease invincible and remorseless. And he really did turn the focus back to the fact that we need to be working together against what is this common enemy, which is the coronavirus. Our medical professionals, our frontline first responders, the folks who are working in grocery stores, all those essential workers who are making sure that Texans and Americans have the things they need at this time. It's just amazing to see all of them come together. We need to continue that message and make sure that we all do our part, right? As the months go on and we learn more about the virus, more about the therapeutics that are coming online, and we're learning more about those, in the hope of, as the president said last night, of a vaccine by the end of the year, right? We have so much to be hopeful for, but we got to keep our eye on the prize, right? We got to focus our target where it needs to be, not get distracted like Democrats have been up and down the board during this entire response. As a voter myself, I certainly will be thinking about in November, who were the people who thought out the guidelines that they were going to put in place for their citizens, for their constituents, the people who count on them to provide leadership. Right. And if you're in one of these states where someone's beating their chest and pointing the finger at the same time, I think you really got to consider about who you are electing to office. Chairman, as we get out of here, we do have a great light at the end of the tunnel, and a question that I know many Texans have been asking about since this response started. The governor has tweeted, alcohol to go to stay. Is it going to happen? Do you think we're going to keep this alcohol to go regulation in place?
Well, it's my understanding that that's actually a law, not a regulation. And if it is, then that'll be a decision for the legislature come January. I know that a big consistent part of our message next session will be, hey, remember how necessary it was to eliminate things that were supposedly protections for the population, but you had to eliminate them to be able to respond well. How about we just make it official and eliminate a bunch of them now?
Yeah, and speaking of crazy, I mean, this is crazy Democratic leadership. In San Francisco, the police chief banned the use of thin blue line on masks during the coronavirus pandemic. So now we have Democrats telling us you have to wear a mask and we're going to fine you, looking at you, County Judge Lena Hidalgo. And at the same time saying, oh, but also while we're forcing you to wear that mask, now we're going to start saying what that mask can have on it or can't have on it. You know, where does this line end for Democrats? Is there any part of our lives that they think that they can't control?
No, it is so the hypocrisy and the inconsistency from the left over and over and over again through this has been it's been offensive, but it's been a good reminder for voters. Yeah, the concern from County Judge Hidalgo in Harris County is that she is at the same time saying, I will jail you if you don't wear a mask, but I'm going to let felons out of prison. And it's that inconsistency that just is coming to light and will be reminding voters about in November as we remind them to vote Republican from the White House to the courthouses all over Texas.
Yeah, I mean, that message is going to be loud and strong as we make our way to November. Chairman, I thank you. It is the most important day of the year for nerds like myself, and I can't go through this podcast without saying it first and foremost. May the 4th be with you, sir. So where do you fall on this? So we obviously know you love a good Agatha Christie mystery, but are you going to be watching the full Star Wars saga on Disney Plus? Is there any time in your schedule for a binge of all 9 episodes?
Not anytime soon, but we are Star Wars fans and Star Trek fans in my house, so we will undoubtedly pick up a little. The best thing I've watched recently, I've gotten back into books since I've been doing a lot of reading lately, but the best thing I've watched recently was the Chernobyl miniseries on HBO. And as we are living right now through the consequences of a communist government trying to bury secrets and not being transparent and not being transparent with the world. It was a good reminder that this is not the only time, and over again, we're proven conservative principles, Republican principles are the right principles.
Yeah, well, shout out to Congressman Michael McCall, who continues to chase down that. Secretary Pompeo announcing over the weekend that there is still strong evidence that links coronavirus to that laboratory in Wuhan. So we'll continue to follow it. But I'm not going to let you get away from this Star Wars discussion, Chairman. I have to know, where do you stand on the prequels?
Oh, well, the prequels are terrible. Empire Strikes Back, no question, the best one of all of them. The last 3 or 4 have been nice fan service. They've been somewhat enjoyable, but it was really remarkable how that series, which so many of us love, went from being a can't miss activity, an event that with really stirring stories and drama and a whole new world, turned into, you know, a nice to see thing, and that's sad to see over time.
Yeah, fortunately though, we have caretakers who are making sure that this realm, this, you know, fictional universe is growing and expanding. I, for one, am a big fan of the Mandalorian series. Jon Favreau has done an excellent job in leading that. Have you caught the Mandalorian series at all? Are you that deep into the Star Wars universe?
Oh yeah, that was actually very, very cool. And Favreau's work with that is really impressive. The fact that he did that after being so key in the Avengers creation and development, holy smokes. I mean, what a great track record he has compared to, say, J.J. Abrams, who does really nice production work and really good fan service and has not really taken a great story anywhere.
Yeah. I would agree with that assessment. You know, JJ has done great in making sure fans are happy with the product that they get. But yeah, I am excited to see where Favreau takes Mandalorian, and let him make as many Disney live action recreations as he wants. Man, the guy's a genius. Chairman, thank you so much for just providing all this info. I know Texans really need it. On our next episode, we're definitely going to be talking about the continued response, where Texas is in the reopening, what we're seeing from these numbers, and hopefully we'll get to talk a bit more about convention, what folks can look for. I'll give a few tips on some hot spots around Houston from my days at U of H, where you definitely got to make a stop when you're in town for convention. Chairman, any last words from you?
Just be safe, be healthy, and get some sun, and go start to resume our new normal, but be safe.
Excellent. Well, we thank everyone for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Let's Talk Texas. Follow Chairman James Dickey on Twitter at James Dickey. And for the latest on how we are going to keep Texas red, follow the Republican Party of Texas on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.